Good evening, everyone. We're just allowing some of our subscribers to join us. We'll give it just a minute because I can see the numbers going up. Okay. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Paramjit Kaur Matharu, and I'm the CEO of Sikh Assembly. Welcome to this evening's discussion to celebrate International Women's Day and Women's History Month. Sikh Assembly is really proud and privileged to welcome a very impressive panel of a spectrum of experience and leadership that we have within our Sikh community here in the UK. And this evening is a very special evening because it's one of the first events that we are hosting for women, by women, with a very esteemed guest and one of our executive members, Jagdev Singh Birdi, who is supporting us through a lot of the very valuable insights that he has through his role in the British Sikh Report. So just a couple of words around this event and what we're trying to achieve. So Sikh Assembly as an organization was set up about 18 months ago, and our main purpose is really to promote and share in trying to get the best out of the Sikh community in the UK and to promote their interests both within the community and also within external circles. And part of that is obviously to celebrate and promote the interests of our people at all ages with all kinds of experience, both for young people and for the aged. So our interest is around the welfare of the Sikh community in the UK. But as a very thriving community, we are so successful as individuals. We want to make sure as a community, our voice is heard in the right way across all kinds of fields of society and communal living. So the role of women and the spaces they occupy, that has been the theme of today's conversation. And we're extremely privileged to have a number of panelists who just have had an amazing journey already, some at the start of their journey and some like me have been around for a while, and we will have a series of questions to go through that. But from a Sikh Assembly perspective, one of the key things we want to do is to make sure that as an organization, we're able to help our young people and vulnerable in society where there's help needed, that we would create the conversations that both empower our community, but also create the right networks. So this event is the first in a series where we will focus on issues that we want to talk about as women. And we have many other conversations in Sikh Assembly that focus on, for example, disabilities, the aged, sport, and we can cover all of that. And I think as we go through today's event, we will get a little bit more of an insight on the areas of work that we would do. If I can introduce you to my co-host, Narinda Kuna. You're on mute, Narinda. Narinda, you're on mute.
Apologies. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Narinda Kaur Kuna, and I am one of the co-hosts for this event. I'm an executive member of Sikh Assembly, but I'm also one of the co-founders of SWAN. SWAN stands for Sikh Women's Action Network, and we are a sister organisation that works in partnership with Sikh Assembly. So this event today is joined between SWAN and Sikh Assembly. So it's a joint event between the two organisations. So just a little bit about SWAN. SWAN is a community interest company that's been set up to support victims of abuse in the West Midlands. We are the only female-led support organisation, Sikh women-led organisation across the whole of the UK that support victims of abuse. And we also work with women to empower them, to try and help them to lead active lives in society and take on leadership roles. So that's what SWAN is about. So just in terms of going forward, I just want to make everyone aware that this event is going to be recorded and it will be shared publicly at a later event. So now, with further ado, I'm going to pass over to Shani Dhanda, who is one of the ambassadors for the Sikh Assembly, who's going to be hosting the event today. So Shani, over to you now.
Thanks, Narinda, and hi everybody. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. So we're a year now into the pandemic lockdown and remote work, and kitchen tables have become home offices and kids have become our co-workers, and the lines between work and home have been blurred. But meanwhile, the lines in housework and gender roles have become glaring and women are struggling to strike a balance. So we're joined today by an incredible panel of Sikh women of all different ages who are working in all different sectors. And we have got a brilliant opportunity to hear from them all and their unique perspective. But before we start the panel discussion, I'd like all the panelists to introduce themselves. So I will call out your names as I see them on screen, and just take a couple of minutes to let us know who you are and what you do. So the first person is Mandeep Reddy.
Thank you very much, Shani, and a warm and a good evening to you all. It's a pleasure to be here. So just a quick brief for myself. I'm head of IT program delivery for Civica, UK and Australia. So I'm working and doing all sorts of different time zones, where we successfully deliver, I want to say, case management systems, but we range from insurance clients to banking to home office systems, where we provided modern slavery systems to catch victims who've been targeted for modern slavery. So that's one of our huge achievements. But previously to that, I was at Bank of New York. I've done a tenure at Accenture, and I've done bits and pieces as a contractor for M&S, etc. Before continuing my career at Civica. I am married with 3 children. My youngest is 19 months. I live in Northwest London, but born in Kenya. I enjoy baking, biking, and all the great outdoors with my family. So just a bit of a warm welcome for myself, and I hope to speak to you all later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mandeep, and I'm sure everyone listening is like, wow, how are you managing all of that? Thank you. Next is Parvinder.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm absolutely honoured to be a part of such an accomplished panel, and just a really brief introduction about myself. My name is Parvinder Kaur Dhaliwal, otherwise known as Pav. I'm a wife and mother of 2 children, 11 and 13 years old. My day job is Leadership Development Manager for both Essex and Kent Police. I also hold the post of Chair of the Race Equality Network, and I'm the first female lead to do so. One of my other portfolios is the South East Region Lead for BME Women in Policing, which is supported by the College of Policing, the National Police Chiefs Council, and the National Black Police Association. And I also lead on learning and development for the National Sikh Police Association. So I'm absolutely privileged to be here with you this evening, and really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks, Shani.
Thanks, Pav. And again, wow, that is incredible. Thank you for joining us this evening. Next up, SWAN, you're next on my screen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to join you all. Great to be here. I'm Jaswant Nawal. I'm a barrister, a Chief Crown Prosecutor. I've worked in criminal justice for over 30 years. I'm the Chief Crown Prosecutor of CPS Thames and Chiltern, so the Crown Prosecution Service. And the Crown Prosecution Service is effectively the largest law firm in the country. We're responsible for law enforcement prosecutions. Good to see Pav here, because I used to kind of work in the kind of Kent, Surrey and Sussex area. Hadn't met you before, so delighted that you're kind of working there with the police. We are not part of the police. The Crown Prosecution Service is independent, and we are a national organisation. I am the national lead for the CPS in honour-based abuse, forced marriage and female genital mutilation. I've done the whole kind of gamut of criminal kind of prosecutions throughout my life. I am now the only Sikh Chief Crown Prosecutor. There are 14 of us. I am the only Asian female Chief Crown Prosecutor currently. There has been one prior to me, and there has been an Asian Chief Crown Prosecutor prior to me as well. So in terms of succession, the Crown Prosecution Service do relatively kind of well, but still there are not enough people who look like me, sound like me in the Crown Prosecution Service. So I'd like to see more of those people follow through. I'm also a mother of 2 children, and one at university and one who's going to be 18 years old tomorrow. So I won't be baking a cake, I have ordered, but we will be kind of celebrating in lockdown tomorrow. Thank you, Shani.
Thanks so much. And oh my gosh, it's incredible hearing your stories so far. I can't wait to get into the discussion. Next on my screen is Banji, and I know we know you're the CEO of Sikh Assembly, but would you like to tell us all the other hats that you wear as well?
Thank you very much, Shani. And actually, before I talk about myself, I'm going to say a few words about you, because you haven't said very much about yourself, and I just feel I want to introduce you a little bit more. So Shani Dhanda, many of you will have seen her face on the sides of the red buses in London. She's been very famously linked with the LinkedIn campaign. She's a disability champion. She's a huge influencer. She is the founder of the Asian Disability Network. I can't even list all the magazine covers that she has adorned in these last couple of years. And I think in terms of her own personal history, which we will ask you to talk about a little bit yourself, Shani, when you introduce yourself fully, but it is a huge journey of battling against so much from a health perspective, and then achieving the heights that you have. So thank you so much. And Shani has from day one volunteered to be an ambassador for Sikh Assembly. To have such a huge influencer as an ambassador for our organization is amazing. So a few words about me. I'm probably the oldest in the bunch on this call today. So I was also born in Kenya. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan Chase Bank. I've been there for 24 years. I started off as the first sort of UK indirect tax manager for the bank. I then became European head and then global. I'm now also, so I'm global head of indirect taxes for the firm, which is 74 countries and all the lines of business. So we cover the full gamut of banking, both retail, commercial, and investment banking, asset management, a little bit of insurance. But about a year ago, I also took over as the head of all taxes for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So that's kind of work. I've sort of stood for the banking industry in the tax circles in the British Banking Association. So I've been the chair of the Indirect Tax Committee for about 8 years, work on lobbying for tax-related matters at the OECD and the European Banking Federation. So that's sort of kind of the day job. The real job, I'm happily married. I have 3 boys, and 2 of them are identical twins. We're going to turn 30 this year, which is an amazing thing for me. 2 daughters-in-law, 1 little granddaughter, joy of my life. So I combined that with being the CEO of Sikh Assembly. Sikh Assembly was formed very much to think about where, in terms of looking at the community representation, other faiths have a certain footprint, and what do we have as Sikh community? We looked at, how do we as a community get represented? Where is our voice heard? Where is it not heard? And so our organization has been set up by a bunch of professionals. We're a relatively small, tight group. We have an executive membership of about 13, 5 trustees, a charitable investment organization. And as I said, we are very focused on looking at the welfare of our community, both, around education, health, disability, careers. There's all of that side of it, but then also in terms of mental, physical health, representation with government, and really the broader issues of society, whether it's climate change, whether it's around the interests of women, children, when we're looking at humanitarian causes around the world, we are interested in those topics, but wearing the lens of British Sikh community. So that's where we've started life. Sorry, I took a bit longer than I intended. Back to you, Shani.
Thank you, Bronjin. Thank you for introducing me. Thank you. Next up, we've got Narinda. I know you just told us a little bit there about SWAN, but it'd be great to hear, again, all the hats that you wear as well.
Thank you very much, Shani. Apart from being one of the executive members of SWAN, my main job that I have is that I'm a councillor in Birmingham City Council. I'm the only Sikh woman councillor out of 101 councillors. I was formerly one of the assistant leaders in Birmingham City Council, and we wrote the neighbourhood operating model that led the shaped devolution in Birmingham in terms of giving residents more of a voice to shape their services. I am a local government association Labour peer, and I am now the chair of the West Midlands Police and Crime Panel, and I'm the first female Asian chair as well, first female but also first Asian chair of that panel as well. And that panel holds the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner to account. So we're like a scrutiny committee that holds a commissioner to account. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm one of the co-founders and an executive director for SWAN as well. So that's Sikh Women's Action Network. And we run all sorts of programs. We also run a helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that support victims of honour-based abuse and forced marriages as well, in partnership with 2 other organisations. And in addition to that, I'm a neuro-linguistics programming practitioner. And when you're at home, that means someone that likes to sort of like understand how people think and how they make decisions, how they recall memories. And it's quite interesting actually when you're talking to people and you're thinking, okay, are they recalling a memory or are they making something up? So it's quite interesting to understand, but it also helps to remove barriers, and it comes in handy when we support our victims. So often when you are supporting victims, they lack self-confidence, they might have low self-esteem. You can help to re-empower them with some of the skills that you have as an NLP practitioner. And I'm also a mental health first aider. So all these skills come quite handy when you're supporting victims. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh my gosh, wow, what an amazing panel we've got tonight, and we're only through half of the introductions, so let's now hear from Jasvinder.
Right, good evening everybody. I don't know how I'm going to follow all of that from such powerful women. It's just amazing to be on this panel this evening with such great Sikh women, and to hear about all of your successes. So I'm Jasvinder Devgon. I am director at NatWest Bank. I head up the Charities, Education and Healthcare Banking team. We set a strategy about 12 months ago all about the bank's purpose. We've heard already about climate and 1 or 2 other things, but we're very, very focused on supporting our communities through kind of growth, development, and certainly through the pandemic and financial situations that our clients find ourselves in. In fact, we've probably spent the past 12 months really helping to deliver the government's the loan schemes that the government has put out. So that's what I do in my role at the bank. We also have a gender network which operates globally. We've got about 12,000 members. I sit on the global leadership committee for that, and at the moment we are celebrating this year's International Women's Day with a month of events. There's a different series of events that are going on at the moment, so quite a lot of activity in that arena. We also run a Sikh network at NatWest Bank. I've been quite actively involved with the network. I've had to step back in the past year or so because of my work on the broader gender network. I lead on diversity and inclusion in its broadest sense for corporate and commercial banking, and that's a national remit that I have. And alongside that, outside of work, I am a non-executive director for Grosvenor Health and Social Care, which it's a leading healthcare provider in the UK, providing care and support to vulnerable people in their homes. My prior roles have included working in the voluntary sector and the women's movement in the fields of domestic violence, so supporting women and children. It's quite some time since I've done that, but I think everything has been brought back into sharp focus because of the issues in the last couple of weeks of the killing and the kidnapping and murder, I should say, of the young woman here in London. So it's been quite a frightening time, and there's been lots of discussion taking place, certainly in the gender network at NatWest. So I'm here really just to offer the best support that I can this evening to colleagues on the panel and also our viewers this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, incredible career you just shared there. We look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you for sharing. Next is Karanji.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. First of all, I'd like to say a massive thank you to all of you, to Sikh Assembly, for having me here. I'm also proud to say that alongside Shani, I'm an ambassador for Sikh Assembly. So a bit about myself. I'm 24 years old. Professionally, I am a recently qualified ACA chartered accountant. I work for KPMG. I've been there for 5 years now. Alongside that, I'm also a sportswoman. So I represent Great Britain in powerlifting. I was the first British Sikh female to represent Great Britain at the World and European Championships. I'm also the reigning Commonwealth champion, where I won 3 golds and 2 silver medals. I compete in the under 63 kilo category, if any lifters out there interested in my statistics. So my best squat is 140 kilos, my best bench press is 82.5 kilos, my best deadlift is 167.5 kilos. So I'm really honored to be here today amongst some incredibly trailblazing ladies, and you all are really inspiring to me, and I'm very excited for this event. So thank you so much for having me.
Can I just butt in for a minute just to say, Karanji is also one of our Sikh ambassadors who joined us very early in our journey, and I constantly just look at her and think, how does she do all of that? And the fact that she's actually sailed through her CA exams, I have to say, is amazing. So as one of the things with Sikh Assembly, we are trying to make sure that we pick up the spectrum of life in our Sikh community, and I think with this young one, we definitely have a gem in our midst. So thank you for Karanji.
Thank you. Yes, incredible, Karanji, amazing. And last but not least, Mandeep Kaur, welcome.
Shani and all the incredible women, thank you very much first of all, for organizing this and coming together to connect. It's I can already feel the energy, so it's beautiful. Okay, so who am I? So my name is Mandeep Kaur, and I work as the chaplain in the British Armed Forces. My role is for British Army, Royal Navy, Royal Air Force, and the Civil Service, because I'm the only chaplain to support the Sikhs in entire defense at the moment. I'm also a commissioned Royal Air Force chaplain as a reservist, because there has been no commissioned chaplains other than Christian chaplains. And so when I first started my role in 2005, it was basically the history, because there has always been either Christian or Jewish chaplains. So first time there was a chaplain from the major world faiths. And since then, the journey has been, various things. And then finally, with a lot of hard work in it, Word Faith chaplains, the doors were open to become as commissioned chaplains as well. So that I started in 2018. So that's what my role is, basically to support the people in moral, pastoral, spiritual, or whatever else comes in whichever way. That's what my main roles are. I've got 3 kids as well, and I was listening to, I think Jaswant, whose son is turning 30 tomorrow, And I was thinking, yeah, you can order the cake, but I have to even bake for the teddies of my kids. There is no way I can skip that because there is an order done to me a month before. Yeah, so and they are my inspiration. They value what I do. They inspire me to what I do. I've got 2 girls and a boy, and amazing to learn from them as well every day. In my free time, if I say that, I work with few charities and travel around the world, not so much in last year and so, to basically I wouldn't say inspire, but at least I would like to think like that. So basically talk to youth, women, or whosoever, based on the values and the teachings that gurus has given us, so that we can all kind of live that life with the highest spirits. And I've also started to run few courses in the community now, where women particularly have gone through some trauma, or whatever else, where they can come together in a collective space, a healing space, to basically be open and be themselves. Yeah, so I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mandeep. Wow, like what a varied career, and you know, I guess we'll be hearing how you've navigated that and working in such a male-dominated sector as well. So thank you for sharing. So as you can all see, we are joined by an incredible panel, and you know, these are just a handful of women that are in our community, and I wish that I had these role models growing up. So it's really important that we're having events like today to highlight these incredible women, and hopefully many more in our community. But before we jump in to the questions and the panel discussion, I'd like to invite Jagdev Singh Riddhi from the British Sikh Report to share some survey results from the previous British Sikh Reports surveys that have previously been done. Jagdev, please introduce yourself, and then feel free to take us through your findings.
Myself. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm just going to share some slides, but before that, if you want me to introduce myself, I'm a statistician by profession, formerly a deputy director at the Office for National Statistics. But since retirement, I've been doing various activities, consultancy, and also lots of voluntary work. So I'm the editor of the British Sikh Report for the last 5 years, but also involved with the Royal Statistical Society, and I'm a member of the National Statistics Advisory Group, which provides advice to the Office for National Statistics and the Government Statistical Service at large. In my consultancy work, in the last few years, I've largely been working on supporting UN projects or World Bank, where in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are targeted at meeting the needs of the world, basically, up to 2030, it's how you measure progress against those goals, and it's helping countries to develop statistical systems that can measure the progress against the Sustainable Development Goals. So that actually keeps us quite busy, because that is a huge agenda. There are about 220 odd indicators to measure hundreds of goals that the UN has set. Locally, I live in Gravesend in Kent, and I'm a General Secretary at the Gravesend Gurdwara, which many of you may be familiar with. Locally involved with the interfaith groups here, the Independent Police Advisory Group, and so on. And a few other things besides. And I'm an executive.
Of course, interrupting you, a very esteemed member of our executive group in Sikh Assembly.
I was just about to say, just a member. So I'm going to share some slides which summarize some of the results from recent British Sikh reports, as Shani mentioned. So let's see if this works. Just trying to find the right. There we are. Can everybody see that? Yes. Okay, so just to start, so we are here celebrating International Women's Day and Women's History Month. So it is a time to celebrate the success and also challenge the inequalities. So we've heard these amazing introductions from all the panelists here today. And in terms of the statistics, with all the successes and challenges, do the statistics reflect reality, how government measures progress and so on? Do the age-old stereotypes still exist? And so I'm going to summarize views of men and women on many issues and how they differ, how we've actually captured those views through the British Sikh report. And one of my passions is very much that statistics should inform the debate. They are for everyone to use, so they should be used effectively to enable positive change, tackling inequalities, and also to help to realize everyone's potential. Just a bit of background to the British Sikh report. We recently published in November the 2020 report, and normally this report is based on annual surveys. So this was the 8th report. We monitor responses so that they are completely representative of UK Sikhs, represented by age, gender, marital status, and by region. And we cover all sorts of topics. Sometimes they're quite taboo topics, such as gender inequalities, mental health, organ donation, drug abuse, things that people don't always talk about, but we need to actually get a handle on what the situation is in all of those sort of types of topics. So just to go through a sort of a quick sort of trip through various statistics and the lives and the differences in lives of men and women. Just looking at employment status first, we see that there are far fewer women in self-employment and more women than men in part-time employment. And I'm basically going to present the statistics, but whether those differences are a good thing or a bad thing is for everybody to discuss then and formulate their views in terms of whether there should be policies to address those issues or celebrate them. That's something I think that we all have to do between us. But the statistics show where the differences are quite stark. In terms of the employment sectors, there are huge differences in representation of men and women. Women are in far greater numbers in the healthcare sector, in education and teaching, and in the public services, charity and social work. And it's completely the other way around in IT and technology and construction and building services. And yet it's amazing, we have some leaders of IT. We've got Mandeep Kaur with me here today, who's leading in IT and technology, but in terms of overall numbers, women are very underrepresented in that sector. Qualifications wise, not a huge amount of difference, but actually at university degree level, consistently year after year, there are more women with degrees than men. Looking at views about whether there should be Sikh faith schools in your area, men seem to be more in favour of wanting Sikh faith schools in their area. And also men are more in favour than women of sending their children to a Sikh faith school if there was one in their area. But in terms of whether there should be sex education in school, whether parents should have the right to withdraw, so more women than men think that parents should not have the right to withdraw children, that it should be compulsory. In Midlands in the UK, there have been protests outside some schools against sex education. And again, women disagree with the protests and think that they shouldn't be happening and that the sex education should be allowed. Teaching about family types in schools, women are more supportive than men of teaching about different family types, such as same-sex parents in this example. And that follows through for other types of families as well. Organ donation, we asked a question in one of the surveys, is organ donation a form of seva? And 67% said that they do consider this to be a form of seva, and it was similar for both males and females. But when you go on to, have you discussed your wishes with your family as to whether you wish your organs to be donated after you die? 38% of women said that they have discussed their wishes, but only 30% of men. So there's quite a big difference there. And when we asked in 2019 whether you have actually registered for organ donation or you carry an organ donor card, which was the case in that year, a lot more women were registered than men, 44% of women and 35% of men. Mental health, this is a question asked about 3 years ago, I think, and whether you've been diagnosed with a mental health condition. And twice as many women as men said yes. And it could be that it's actually underreporting and not acceptance by men of these issues. But the actual reported statistics, it was 10% of women and 5% of men who said yes. We asked whether you had actually known somebody who's experienced a mental health condition in the previous year, and 80% of women said that they know someone who has, compared with 68% of men. Last year we asked about isolation, whether people are feeling isolated, and more women than men are feeling isolated. Similarly, we asked about whether people feel left out. These are standard questions that the Office for National Statistics asks in their survey as well. And again, women feeling a lot more left out than men, in terms of often left out or some of the time. And similarly, feeling lonely. So on all of the three of these indicators, women are feeling more either lonely or in terms of being left out of things. We asked a couple of years ago about people's perceptions of whether they have a healthy diet in terms of their overall health and well-being. And women felt that they have a healthier diet than men. Brexit, I'm just flipping through lots of different topics here. We asked about voting behaviour in Brexit in 2016 referendum, and more women are in favour of remaining in the EU or they didn't vote, whereas a lot more men were in favour of leaving the EU. In the last general election in 2019, we asked how people had voted, and only 14% of Sikh women and 31% of men voted Conservative. So more than twice the number of men voted Conservative compared with women. And on the other hand, with Labour, 50% of Sikh women voted Labour and then 39% voted Labour. Those patterns were similar to the overall UK population, but at different levels. So while more women voted Labour than men, the numbers were much lower in the overall population. Now, I just want to finish with this last slide, which is about the main issues affecting Sikh women in Britain. We asked that question, and there were various options. We asked people to put their top 3, and also they could write in additional ones. And the top 5 issues that were highlighted were violence, sexism, well-being, equal pay, and racism. But also there was access to education and training, secure employment, and affordable housing. So they came 6, 7, and 8. With that, I think I'm going to finish, but it was very much a rush through of what's contained in the last few British Sikh reports, which you can all sort of see. There's a lot more in them. This is just a taster, but you can actually download them all at this link, britishsikhreport.org. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks so much, Jagdev. That was so insightful, and the stats there, you know, quite stark and things I'd never really seen before in relation to Sikhs between the genders. So thank you so much for sharing that. And if we had more time, we would have asked you a couple more questions, but we are itching to get onto the panel discussion. But for anyone that wants to find out more and also participate in the next British Sikh report, do visit britishsikhreport.org, and you can, you know, as Jagdev said, see everything there and have a good read. But thank you for joining us as our honorary speaker today.
So I'm going to drop out now, but good luck, and it's been a great honour to be part of this event, and good luck with you.
So we can now get into the discussion with our incredible panel. And I just want to start by saying, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll come to them as we go through the panel discussion. There's, you know, nothing really off limits here. We've got an amazing panel, so this is a great opportunity to ask any questions that you do want to. So let's start. We've got just under an hour, so we're going to see how we get on. But my first question is to Parvinder, Mandip, Riddhi and Baramjeet. So in that order, if you could answer. So we know that the role of women has changed in society. do you think the role of women in the household has adapted accordingly? Parvina, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, no problem. If I can get myself off of mute. So yeah, I think the role of women has changed within the household, and I think that the bar that we set has to be one that we set together. And I'm very pleased to say that my husband and I have set the bar very high within our house. We do earn equally. We run the house equally. We pay the bills equally. And it's surprising actually how many people kind of raise an eyebrow if I say that my 13-year-old son irons his own uniform or does the Hoover, or you know, when I went full-time, my husband picked up the school drop-offs and pickups and after school clubs. You know, the fact that my daughter at 11 years old does the dusting and you know, cleaning the glass or whatever else, you know, chores around the house. So I think it's surprising how many people find that even now in this day and age where we are earning on par, where we're running the house on par, that actually things like the chores in the house can be a bit surprising to people that we do that. But I think my husband will agree with me, I'm sure, is that we're setting the standard for our children. You know, we're giving them life skills as well. If we were to ask ourselves when we were at that age, you know, did our parents teach us about things like managing money, for example, you know, so savings and things like that. So it extends further than chores. But the point is, it is important to give them responsibility. And I think that certainly within our household, that role has changed and everybody does their part within our household.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more. You know, it's a life skill. It doesn't have to conform to gender roles. Everybody needs to learn those things and to know how to do them. Thank you for sharing. Mandeep, do you want to go next?
Yes, so actually I gave this question a lot of thought. The reason being, I was brought up in a very traditional home. My dad went to work, my mum stayed at home. She didn't juggle work and home. She had, you know, we had our attention. She had to look after my granny, but she was always there. I don't remember my mum having to sort of juggle a meeting or go to make some roti or come back and then sort of say, guys, are you okay? So then I got married, and I got married in a very sort of, for me, an eye-opener family. My mother-in-law has 5 children. One of them is a special needs, my brother-in-law special needs. He's still at home, and she juggled a full career, and she only retired 2 years ago, and she managed to do it all. And she prioritized her life a little bit differently. So where we had hot food, you know, we had banter on the table. My married life was very different. You know, food was sort of eat as you go sort of thing when I got married. And when we moved out of the sort of married home into our own house, and before we had children, my husband and I was working, I was at Bank of New York, I was traveling into Canary Wharf. I realized very quickly that our worlds were very different. Though we are Sikh, though we pray to the same Babaji, we do all the same mathatek, we were so different. We bought a new house, and obviously our main mantra was always Simran and Part. We always brought that into our home. And then we had Simran, my eldest daughter. And what we wanted to do was that we wanted to have careers that we wanted obviously have our careers, have our children, but have, you know, that banter on the table, have the values that my parents had given to us. So even though my dad worked, my mom was around, and I wanted that for my children. I wanted them to have fresh roti every evening so we could have that chat on the table. And as time progressed, our careers changed. So I sort of reached quite high in extension. I had to take my step back, but then my husband was traveling a lot more to the US. So we actually decided how should we make this work? And we did. So I worked a bit more flexibly. I sort of made work for me. So where we talk about household, we wanted to stick to values. We wanted to make sure that we caught up with our kids after work. And then we had our youngest one almost a year ago, and he's a fundamental part of their life, because obviously the old one's a bit older, the youngest or the youngest, but he needs to feel part of this house. And as Pav mentioned there, they're domesticated. The girls can do a nice tulka for dal, they can make a nice dal, they unload the dishwasher, they'll look after you. You'll step into the house, they'll make you a nice, decent cup of tea. And that's core. I feel no matter what you are, boy, girl, whatever it is, that's core to our values. So even though the career part's there, I really wanted to make sure that the livelihood of Babaji in our house, Bart, Simran, and being together is fundamental, which is core to my traditional values. And I sort of try and bring that into my in-laws, into trying to get that ticking a bit more. But I see some of the challenges my mother-in-law had to go through, which of course, eye-opener. So I took a different perspective to this, very different, but again, amazing, because I've learned so much from the two different worlds that I was dropped in and dropped out of.
I love how you describe that. Actually, you center, you know, your life and your household around your shared values, but you know, with your husband and your family, and that's how you've decided that you're going to make work for you. And you know, I understand that not all in all jobs you can do that, but it's a privilege where you can, right?
And it's changing, right, Shani? It's changing. Work, and you'll notice these days on LinkedIn, there's flexible working. We promote flexible working. We want mothers to come back to work. We are trying to juggle this, you know, sort of work-life balance where you can take a 2-hour lunch if you wanted, go into a drop, go into a pick. We've got it where my husband works US hours, so he does the drops, I do the picks, and then we do a tag team. So in the evening, he'll work a little bit later, and then I'll pick up a few emails. It's not easy, but you do get that rhythm, but you've got to have the right positive mindset to do so. I think that's fundamental to all of these questions, that positive mindset. How am I going to make this work for me?
And teamwork, by the sounds of it, you know, sounds like teamwork is central to that. But let's bring Paramjit in. What are your views?
Sorry, unmuting again. I was listening to Mandeep and full of admiration for that story. I think for me, it was interesting because I am the last in a family of 5 girls and 1 brother. And my mother was at home, but even in those days back in the day in Kenya, my father was, he traveled with his job, so he was always outside the city. My mother kept home. So even though she never went to work, she was running everything because dad used to appear every 3rd weekend and we loved him to bits. He spoiled us, but really mum was mum and dad through those years. And when you think back, I'm talking about 1960s, 70s in Kenya, and the community there was a lot more old-fashioned. So for my mother to be able to do that in those days was amazing. And I think in terms of how we were brought up, the fact that we were 5 girls, I went to I did my A-levels in a school where there were 1,200 boys and 20 girls. And I know my aunts were questioning my dad's sanity, you know, what are you doing? Ki kar diya, you know, and my dad said, oh, nanu pata hai, meri pag di laaj. So I'll translate in English. So my dad was always, well, they've grown up with the values. They know exactly how they need to behave. My girls can hold their own. And so, you know, whether it was, you know, standing up in auditoriums, singing competitions or oratorical contests, even in those days, I had that upbringing. And I think once I came to the UK, I actually didn't go to university, even though I had a space, because we had a family circumstance which was really painful. And I know my dad was quite upset about that because I ended up taking a role with HMRC. I've actually trained on my job to get to where I am today. But actually, the journey when I got married, I'm married into a family of real professionals, feisty women, feisty men. So I fitted in that sense. And in terms of my partnership with my husband, our journey became a little bit more painful because I discovered health issues which were latent, had a difficult journey having the kids. So I've had 30 surgeries. I've had the career, and the secret behind all of that is my husband, actually, because the partnership, when he's kind of said, it's okay, you do what you can do and the rest I will pick up. And that thread worked when the kids were little. So I can, you know, I can honestly say on the days when I didn't want anybody else in the world to look at me, my husband was the one who was mopping up around me and saying, this is great. And then as we've grown with the children and the 3 boys, my career and my opportunities were sort of opening up differently. So actually, he decided, even though he's far more educated than me, that he would do the 9 to 5 and not be aggressively pushing, whereas my opportunities were opening up. So my hours were longer. I have traveled the world with my role. and with complete trust that my husband was able to be mom and dad while I was traveling. So almost the role reversal to what my dad had done with my mom. So I think coming back to the roles at home, I thought I knew it all. But actually, when my boys, two of my boys are married, and I'm very, very blessed with the girls who are in my home now. And I realized I had become a bit of an alpha male. And the girls have brought this, that they're wonderful, and they hold their own, but they have taught me also that some of my habits are a little bit old-fashioned. And so as we've gone through the last 3 or 4 years as a bigger extended family, I think we've really shared the chores much better. I stand corrected sometimes when I make a mistake and like look to one person or the other. You learn a lot in life. And to answer your core question, pandemic, where we are today and how we're juggling lives, there's 4 of us working from home today, and actually lunch is a free for all. Whoever is free, whoever comes down, bustles as much as they can. And those values of katte khana, katte behna, katte, you pray together, you eat together, you live together. That's Sikhi, that is Chardi Kala. And I think that's what we as a community have such a huge foundation. And it kind of sings through, I think, all of our lives. Sorry, long story, but the answer is, I think we're getting better.
Yeah, and I think, one of the common themes there from all of the answers is teamwork, how much your husbands and families have supported you, but, that's not the case for everybody. People that aren't married, people that were married and now aren't married, it's not going to be the same story for everybody. So my next question, and I think we had a little bit of insight to this from the British Sikh report slides that were just shared. But my next question is, do we think that women do face additional barriers to men in the Sikh community, and why do we think that is? And I'd like Mandeep Kaur, SWAN, Karanji, and Narinda. I'd like to put that question to you, and we'll start with Mandeep Kaur.
Thank you. Not an easy question. So I can only talk from my perspective, because I have definitely not experienced what men experience, because they might be experiencing various sort of challenges, barriers in their own way. What I've experienced is that it's one of those things where her needs a holding hand. If we kind of put out to achieve, then what happens is that very soon we are made aware that you are a female. Do you need somebody to hold your hand in order to achieve that? And my question normally is there a flaw? Am I made to doubt myself because have I done something wrong? So yeah, that guilt, that self blame or whatever, that flow kind of. And then there is no flow, but it's that the norm that has been prevailing. And yeah, so that I have definitely experienced, and I'll share quickly one example. I organized one of the very out of norm event at National Memorial Arboretum a few years ago. And that involved a massive religious service. Guru Granth Sahib Ji came and blessed that place. And that has never happened in history, where all the visitors are saying, and they're seeing that, who is this? Why there's so many people showing so much respect, because there are all sort of people standing there and visiting. And I remember when I was planning that event, I had, as soon as it became a public information that is happening, excuse me, I started having phone calls. We want to see you, meetings, phone calls. Are you sure you can do this on your own? That continued. And even on the day of the event, I still remember I had a text in the morning. You will be better if we send you a little help. We have some help. He's ready. And I politely declined. I said, you're very welcome to come, but it's all sorted. And I still remember there were people who came, and And my understanding is, and some of them did actually, said that as well openly, that we only came to see your flaws, that where it goes wrong, and then basically to challenge you that we told you, remember, you need the support. But thankfully, Marj Kirpa, when you have the right intentions, right passion, and you know that you're working for the bigger cause, you don't see yourself as a man or a woman or anybody else. You are just a soul working for that passion, and you will put your 100% in order to achieve that. And that's all that mattered to me. Whatever the results were, we will see that later on.
Wow.
Definitely feel that there are, and again, I'm not comparing here, but there are definitely some challenges that I have faced myself.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And, as you were sharing that, I was just reflecting on the fact that, as women, we don't go around thinking, I'm a woman, therefore this is all I can achieve. But it's sad to hear that that's how men might view us, not as just human or equal. And actually, it's so sad to hear that they were there to doubt you and actually say, to have an opportunity to say, I told you so. But congratulations on putting together such an amazing event and, history.
Can I quickly also add, we are not generalizing here, because there were also men there who were there to do whatever they could to make this happen. So because, as I said, there is no such thing as men and women when you're working towards. So we are not here today to say, look, women are great and men aren't. We are not generalizing as well. But the idea is that that's sometimes the cultural norms, the kind of domain we are living in, because of whatever the societal norms are, and just basically raising awareness that before we fall into the pitfalls of the same thinking over and over in the same pattern and the same cycles, let's become a little bit, think with consciousness, that look, this person, give them a chance, give them an opportunity, and rather than straight away pointing the judgment. So, I had amazing brothers. My husband was there. Yeah. Whatever we could do to achieve it together as a team. Yeah, just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. It's really important as well. SWAN, what are your thoughts? Do you think that women face additional barriers to men in the Sikh community?
I'm going to say a very kind of strong, emphatic yes. And I think there's probably kind of many women who, not just on the panel, but those who are kind of listening, who will say that the kind of pathways we kind of tread to our careers are often littered with many challenges and many obstacles, those that we are very obvious, and those which are quite insidious and they're indirect. And I think reaching the kind of pinnacle of our careers or being on the kind of pathway, we've got to be aware of it and kind of learn from it. We don't define ourselves in any way, I don't think. I think we enter this kind of life in a very kind of innocent way. Our kind of Sikh values teach us humility. They teach us the kind of goodness to kind of work hard and pay back. But I'm afraid we do live in a society, when you're a realist, and this is probably me having done criminal law for over 30 years, that you do become a bit cynical and you see life through a particular perspective. I try not to do that, trying to get the balance. But ultimately, we reach the kind of positions because we have been through and had to kind of climb many mountains, jump through hoops, be tested by different standards as kind of women. And then as an Asian woman or as a kind of Sikh woman, you're tested even kind of further. And then I was born in Yorkshire, so I've even got my Yorkshire accent. So even that goes against me, because I remember I'm a barrister. I'm probably the bar, the judiciary is probably one of the last bastions of sexism. It's very traditional. In the, if you think I was called to the bar in 1993, women were still required to wear a skirt or a kind of suit. They couldn't wear a trouser suit in court. Can you believe that? And this was in the 1990s. It was still legal to maritally rape your wife. The law only kind of changed in the 1990s. We're only in kind of 2021 now. That wasn't that long ago. So when you look at the obstacles, I look back and I think, were they self-imposed obstacles? No, they weren't self-imposed obstacles. And I think, and Mandeep and others have kind of said, no, we go into this with the kind of fullness of what we want to do, but we're facing obstacles from family within, and we've got to be open about that. We face obstacles within the community, within society. And we have to challenge those obstacles. We have to question why those obstacles are there. And I've through my kind of career have had to do that. So our names are kind of unisex, aren't they? So, you know, if I don't use Miss Jaswant Kaur Narwal, nobody knows. I'm always assumed to be a man because I'm a Chief Crown Prosecutor. The assumption is always it's a Mr. So I always get letters in from members of the, you know, public or whoever, assuming I'm a man. And when I walk through the door, if it's a meeting, they're always very surprised. And how many times have we all had it where they're not expecting you to be the head of that team or the head of that kind of division? How many times have we had to work twice as hard, thrice as hard? And I'm afraid we're still saying it now. And I think we still have to understand that these are obstacles that we face, not because we're Sikh women, it's because we're women. So that kind of gender differentiation is not something which is seen kind of differently. It's an intersectionality, isn't it? It is kind of gender, it is our kind of race, it is our kind of religion, our culture. I've never put those barriers in. I've always kind of felt my parents brought me up in the way that I could achieve anything and everything if I put my mind to it and I worked hard. And that's the kind of ethos I've had in my kind of family, in my kind of growing up. And it's something I teach my kids, you know, reach for the stars, you know, there aren't any glass ceilings. But you do need kind of, you know, assistance, help along the way. So networks are so important. Mentoring is so important. Giving back is so important. Being a role model is so important. Being in a place where people look at you and they think, ah, well, she looks like me, she sounds like me. I could perhaps do that job. So those are the kind of types of things which are still obstacles. So when I talk to young people today and they still say that exists, gosh, I think my journey is going to be walked by other young people, and that can't be right. So our role and responsibility, certainly for me, at my age and where I am in my kind of career, is to push against that, make sure that the pathway that is going to be created has to be a bit smoother, doesn't it? Because I started my pathway, I went to university in 1986. You know, when I went to university, I went to the University of Lancaster. I didn't put that as my first choice. I was born in Bradford in West Yorkshire. I put Leeds University as my first choice because I thought, you know, I couldn't be seen to be going away because I'd be the first. But I was so wrong. My parents were open-minded about it. And I think if they trust you, as Paramjit Benji was saying, you know, we carry the kind of honour, the kind of izzat of our kind of families on our kind of reputation. So we don't kind of abuse that. So yes, there are obstacles, and I'm afraid, you know, there will always be obstacles because we are different. We will be different. You don't go to the right school. You don't have, as they say in the kind of barristerial world, you don't have the right school tie, you don't have the right connections, you're not going to be given the same opportunities. And if you're not, then you have to create those opportunities for those who we need to support in our own communities and our own networks. We need to ensure that we aim towards a level playing field, but also understand that it's not a level playing field, and we need to eradicate that.
And I really like the point that you made that, you know, yes, we do face barriers, but it's not just because we're Sikh. It is largely because of the fact that we're women. And I guess, you know, anything else, and it is an additional layer, it's an additional lens, and then it does then become an additional barrier that you have to break through. I know I've experienced that as an Asian woman who has a very visible condition, because that's the first thing that people judge me on, not my gender or my race or ethnicity. Thank you. That was a brilliant answer. Thank you. I'll come to Karanjit next. You know, you're a young woman. You know, in your career, in addition to being an amazing sportswoman, you know, have you faced additional barriers so far, do you think? Have you noticed a difference?
I think I had a good think about this question, and I think there's two sides that we need to consider, and I'm really inspired by all the different perspectives, and I definitely agree. I think from the Sikhism perspective, we're taught the equality between man and woman. Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, you know, from women, men are born, you know, kings are born from women, so why call them bad? And that is something that we should all take on board and really inspire us, that women are equal to men. However, I unfortunately think that culturally, these norms, these values are not taken on board. Often you see that there are perceived barriers that you have. From my own example, I compete in powerlifting. It's a very male-dominated sport. I mean, I can draw upon an example from myself. When I entered my first competition at 17 years old, and I walked in with my brothers right by my side, my twin older brothers, and the referees almost came up to me and they said, "Oh, your brother's looking to compete today." And they're like, "No, it's my sister." And that almost lit like a huge fire inside of me, that I want to be able to prove what I can do. Why can't females be strong? I think it's really important that we kind of hone in this message. But I also think another barrier that we face is, in our community, we often think that we need to focus on our academics. We need to make sure that we're doing well there. But I'm hoping that my example can kind of open people's eyes, that please give your children a chance. Please let them, support them in their opportunities. I'm really grateful that my family has been super supportive for me. My dad is actually my coach, and that's like, we have a really special relationship. If anyone's ever seen the film Dungle, that's pretty much our story. So yeah, I think it's just amazing, and I pray that people see my example and they're able to talk with their parents and say, "Look, Karanjeet's doing it, please let me have a go." And my wish is that one day when I'm competing on the world stage, I'll have girls like me next to me, and not even just to be as good as me, to be better than me. I want them to be champions, and that's my real dream. So yeah, I think it's barriers, but we're all looking to break barriers as these incredible women are doing.
Thank you so much. And we've got loads of questions coming in, so I think we might have to stay on a little bit longer than planned, but we'll try and get through them all as quick as possible. So Narinda, I'm actually going to ask you the next question, if that's okay. Maybe you can incorporate your answer into the next one. So my next question is, you know, we recognise that domestic violence, as we saw again in the British Sikh report, is something that significantly impacts women and domestic violence because of alcohol abuse. So with your experience, can you share any examples of stories or yeah, you know, work that you've done that can inspire us, you know, when we're faced with adversity, because that is a you know, tough situation to be in. And I'd like to ask that to Narinda first, and then SWAN.
Sorry, thank you. So, I mean, domestic abuse is not always related to alcohol abuse. It is sometimes related to alcohol abuse. Domestic abuse is all about power and control. So when someone is a victim of abuse, it's because the perpetrators want to enforce their power on top of another individual. And obviously when people are, if they they consume alcohol, that helps, that makes them feel like, you know, that they are absolutely untouchable, they can do what they like, and that sort of like adds to the equation. In terms of domestic abuse, there's all I can say is that when people are victims, there's lots of barriers that victims face as to why they don't reach out for help in our community. So we support victims with all sorts of cases, and obviously I can't share any details about that, but some of the barriers that victims face are things like language barriers. They might be fearful of the results of if they reached out for help, if they would be there might be immigration issues, they might not know them. It's about the fear of the unknown as well. So it's like, if I reach out for help, where will I live? How will I finance or support my children? You know, what support is available? And all that knowledge is not out there in the community. So part of what we do with SWAN is we go out and we deliver workshops, and we also share education with the community in terms of telling them that if a child lives in an abusive environment, the impact on the child. So we've had many stories, cases where we've had victims who have been in absolutely horrific circumstances when they've been with their perpetrators, but then after they've left, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. They have restarted their lives. You know, we've helped them get accommodation, get their own houses, sort out their finances, support the children in terms of emotional impact that they've had as victims, because the victim is not just the parent who is being abused, but also the children who might not be physically abused, but mentally it scars them when they are in an abusive household. So all I can say is that if you are in also you know someone that's in an abusive environment, reach out for help, because help is out there. Yeah, so reach out for help. Help is out there. You can restart your life. If you don't leave an abusive environment because of yourself, think about your children and the impact it's having on them.
Thank you, Narinda. That's, you know, such an important message, and just goes to show why SWAN's work is so important, especially for the women in our community. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Narinda's kind of set that out kind of really kind of well in the kind of context, and sadly it's something I'm too familiar with because of the work I kind of undertake. And we know all the statistics about, you know, 2 women dying a kind of week, being murdered as a result of kind of domestic violence, not reporting until it's too late. We prosecute the kind of cases, but by the time they get to us, it's usually taken a very long time for the victim to have built up the confidence to report a case and actually then go through the criminal justice process. It's not easy, because it usually requires the victim to be given evidence against her family members, if not her kind of partner. And I'm saying a he, it's usually a she who is the victim, but we do have male victims of domestic abuse as well. And it's important to recognize that as well. And there's a number of kind of reasons that Narinda's kind of picked up on. And, you know, fear is one of them for not kind of giving evidence. We've got on not reporting, in fact, fear, again, back to honour is of the kind of family pressure, which is another one. Being in a marriage, and it may have been a arranged marriage, it may have been a forced marriage, and believe you me, there are still a lot of forced marriages which happen out there. We see these cases. And usually it's the kind of family kind of pressure not to break up the kind of family kind of unit, because we live in a family structure. There's a sense that the kind of the family unit is very important, and it's of paramount importance, and it can't be broken up. And the blame, unfortunately, is always put on the victim, who's usually the kind of woman. She's shouldering that blame, and she's thinking it's something that she did. And I've spoken to many victims over my kind of career. I'm afraid it hasn't changed that much, because they blame themselves. And I've been to refuges, women's refuges, where they didn't realize that they were being abused. So the power and control issue, what Narinda's kind of referred to, that's so true, but they don't understand that they're being victims. And I think there is a greater sense, and the law does allow for this now, for coercive control, coercive behavior, indirect kind of domestic abuse as well, emotional abuse, all of that, which impacts on the confidence of a woman and her ability to be able to make decisions. That dependence. So if you're not independent, you don't have the means to be able to leave home, that's not going to make you report offending behavior, domestic abuse. And as women, most women put their children first. They don't want to report because they know it's going to be disruptive to their children. They're going to have to take the children out of school, away from their family and their kind of friends. So they, again, shoulder that kind of burden as well. And we can say it's very easy, but I have case after case where victims, when they finally do make statements, withdraw their evidence because they don't want to go ahead. And we have case after case where the family have applied kind of pressure to the kind of victim, and she's kind of gone back to the kind of household because they said it's going to get better, and it doesn't, I'm afraid. But there are ways and means, I won't talk about it now, but where we can support victims in giving evidence. There's ways in which we can prosecute cases without the victim coming to court to give evidence, because we can rely upon other evidence, be it medical evidence, be it collated evidence from previous kind of incidents, be it, you know, body worn camera evidence from an officer who's been able to record it on his body worn evidence, be it, you know, neighbours who have recorded kind of incidents. We can build up the kind of picture there and present a case, so we can present a strong case and get a conviction. But this debate on domestic abuse justifies probably a whole kind of program, and I don't do it justice by just kind of making reference to that, because it is so widespread. And I'm afraid through the pandemic we've seen, you know, the charities have seen this, the police have seen this, we have seen this, the numbers have shot up. They've shot up, and women now, as we're on this kind of program, children and kind of male victims are suffering as a result of that increase. And I'm afraid there's very kind of few places for them to go. The charities are doing the best they can to support them. And I think this is a subject matter we need to kind of keep on the agenda at the top, because as mothers, we raise our children, we raise boys, we have to teach them right values. We have husbands, we have uncles, we have cousins, we have male brethren amongst us. So we have to be able to raise this and challenge it. It's what International Women's Day talked about, challenging as well. We have to challenge this and call it out when it's there in front of you.
Thank you. So
don't make it a hidden crime.
Yeah, can I just also come back on that? So too often we see that when a woman speaks out against domestic abuse, the repercussions of that is we will often get family members saying, well, she's left not because of the reason that she's left, which is the abuse, but because she's having an affair or she's got a boyfriend. So the way that they handle it is to try and dishonor the family. And I think one of the things that I do also want to raise, which is quite prevalent within the Sikh community and domestic abuse. So financial abuse is also a recognized form of abuse. And we see this time and time again, whereby victims of domestic abuse, there are huge debts incurred in their names. And they might have properties which their husbands might have bought in their names and have no control over that. They might have credits and debts and stuff which are incurred in their name. So if they leave, they're fearful, well, if I leave, how am I going to manage all of that? So that is like an extra barrier that's put in front of them. But also another thing as well, when we deal with so many cases where we have victims of abuse who come from abroad, and they might not have an recourse to public funds, so they might not be able to access benefits or housing from their understanding. But what I will say is that the local authorities have a duty of care for victims and their children. So do not let that act as a barrier for yourselves. There is also the domestic abuse, the DDV concession as well. So again, that is another form of another mechanism that's been put into place to support victims of abuse who might not have permanent status here, but might be a victim of abuse. So there's huge additional barriers. And another thing as well, I've never known that in our community, we have unregistered marriages. You heard about it in the Muslim community, you very rarely heard about it in the Sikh community, but actually this is quite common in our community as well. So again, that's another topic that we can actually have a whole show about, talking about unregistered marriages. And if someone is a victim of abuse and they are in an unregistered marriage, then how does that, what are the repercussions of that when they then decide to leave that abusive relationship? So there's so many additional barriers in our community that prevent victims from leaving an abusive relationship.
Yeah, and there's so much conversation happening in the chat, and just to say, all of the links, resources, organizations, all the names that have been shared, we will share these resources with you along with a link to the recording. So don't feel like you need to scribble it all down. We will share it with you. We are really running out of time, so I hope everyone's okay just to stay on a little bit longer. There was just a follow-up question. Someone has asked, what do you say about the lack of prosecution of sexual assaults and rape convictions?
It's quite complex because as we've kind of seen this week, there's been a lot of discussion because there was a judgment which laid down whether or not the CPS had changed its position recently in relation to kind of cases, and whether that impacted on the number of prosecutions, and it went in our kind of favour. But the fact is that there are more cases reported of rape and sexual violence than we do prosecute. And it's very complex. Rape, sexual violence are very complex kind of cases. It's usually the kind of evidence when it's consent between two people, and it's who you believe on that basis. There has been an increase in the number of kind of prosecutions kind of more recently. We have got specialist kind of prosecutors who deal with these cases. They are specially kind of trained, highly kind of experienced prosecutors who handle the cases. But these cases are more and more complex because the way in which they happen is more complex. The evidence that we have to collate, for example, from mobile phones, which is almost like a computer, a handheld computer, which has got so much data, all of that has to be downloaded. That kind of takes time. There is disengagement kind of in the kind of process as well from kind of victims. We've got to build that confidence up to be able to show that we do take cases to kind of court, we can successfully kind of prosecute these cases. And we've got to support kind of victims through this process. And it can be quite an ordeal to go through a trial, a criminal trial, if you're a kind of rape victim. And there is specialist kind of support that is put in kind of place to support those kind of victims going through. So I can say a lot more on this, but I'll stop because I'm just nowhere short of time.
And I completely agree. We will absolutely revisit this topic. It definitely needs its own event. It's a very important topic, and you're completely correct when both of you have said we actually don't know what domestic abuse or violence means or what that actually is. Many of us don't know that, and if we don't know that, then how do we know that that's not happening to us? So we will absolutely come back to them. Sorry to cut you off short there. So yeah, we've covered lots of different topics so far, and I think a real key thing here is that women are working super hard to break those glass ceilings, but we can't do it, without allies, and our male allies in particular, whether they be in the home, in the community, or in the workplace. So my next question is, what advice would you give to Asian women and their allies that support them, or allies that want to support Asian women, starting out in the world on their own journey? And also I'd like to extend this to include, mothers who have got families. I know a lot of people are asking how you all manage that. So Mandeep, Kaur, can we start with you first? And then we'll go to Jasvinder and Pavinder.
The two Mandeep Kaurs, is that me? Okay. So being mother myself, it's a difficult one when you think, okay, where do I strike a balance? And to be honest, I've come to a conclusion there is no balance. Why do I need a balance? As long as this sits right with me, my family, my passion, whatever I'm doing, and everybody's kind of content with it, yeah, that is fine. I was actually doing a little exercise today, thinking of where am I and where I would like to see myself. And then being honest with myself, some of the things I want to do, that what is stopping me. And big thing that came out of my head, I'm being honest here, is what will people say? A fear of uncertainty, unknown, of not being successful in new endeavors or whatever else that can happen. And then the next thing that came to my head is dream big, less fear, more faith. What's going to happen? At least I tried. And it's not about anybody else anymore. It's about my own passion here, setting the right boundaries around me, setting the right boundaries around the people who you work with. Yeah. So I think to all my sisters out there, all I want to say is just follow your dream. whatever it could be, there is no such thing as small dream or big dream. Your dream is your dream. And sometimes if it doesn't make sense to others, that's fine, because your dream is your dream. Simple as that. So, and put your best into it. Don't worry about what will happen, as in what's the outcome. And that is definitely what I'm working on right now, because for me, life is a never ending learning path. And I also feel that the day we sit down and we feel that, yeah, that's enough, not that we shouldn't be content. We should always be content, as we try to be content in every moment of our life, but at the same time keep growing. And that's what Guru Nanak Sahib taught us, to keep growing, keep learning, keep seeking, and because we don't want to be becoming those stinking puddles. We want to keep flourishing by learning, by growing. And I also want to say one thing here. It's not necessarily for women who work, who are professionals. Whether you work or you don't work, whether you're a mother or not mother, single, whosoever you are a whole individual within yourself. And embrace that. Live your life to the fullest. Don't wait for tomorrow that, oh, somebody will come and make me happy and take my pain away. I can tell you today, that's never going to happen. Yeah, I can definitely say that. Even if I have millions of people challenging me today, right now, I can say that. So take the ownership of your own being, your own well-being, and just be your wholesome, whosoever you are. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Amazing advice. And I second that, by the way. Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Jasminda, what are your thoughts? What advice can you give to Asian women and their allies to starting out on their journey?
So actually, the first thing that I need to say, remiss of me that I didn't mention my daughter in the introduction. So a 16-year-old going through her GCSEs. So I would say one of the first things really is that, great panel of speakers tonight, but not all women have the same start in life that some of us might have had, or that our daughters will, or our children will, because not everybody has got the same level of privilege and access to education. So my starting point would always be education. So I left school, I started to work at NatWest Bank. My career, I'm not going to talk massively about my career now, but maybe, another session if you're interested, just about career skills and things. But, it was during my working full time that I also studied to further myself, got myself a degree over the years. So I think education is really, really important and that's whatever level of education you can get, whether it's GCSEs, A levels, off to university. But I think, really focus and achieve the best that you can. Enter the world of work. I think it is so important. We've heard already through the Sikh report, the types of roles that women are in, very much gender stereotypes around caring, the NHS. We didn't really see much around the financial services or the legal profession, to just Swan's point earlier. So, there are so many opportunities out there. There are so many careers that you can enter into, not just the usual ones that you hear about, but a whole range of other things. So broaden your horizons, broaden your networks. And I would also say that world of work, I can speak now from my experience of the corporate world. There are different entry points. So you can start off at an apprenticeship level. For me, all those years ago, I started on the very bottom rung that you can imagine in the bank. And I've worked my way up in different ways. But, there's different entry points from apprenticeships to graduate schemes. And once you're in, you can move around the business. It's not just about banking and finance, but there's HR, there's digital, there's legal, there's a whole array of things. I mean, we've moved digitally, online, everything, like most professions, and the whole sector is changing. So we need lots of young people with their ideas and innovation to join us. And so in the past 5 years, but since the death of George Floyd last year, there's been such a massive focus on diversity and inclusion. So, we want young talent, we want people that are different, that look different, that think differently to come and work for us. Because I said right at the outset that we represent our communities, and we can only do that if our workforce represents our communities. So, you know, but once you're here, I would say get involved. You know, there are so many things for in the corporate world for people to get involved with, young women to get involved with, and it's a place where you can build your skills, your knowledge, your confidence, your networks, your motivation, and your respect. And so that's you as a banker or whatever career you enter into, but that's also you outside of work. So we've heard some of the issues that impact women at home. We've heard about the abuse and the violence, and the other thing that I guess entering that world of work gives you is that platform to become financially secure and financially independent, which is so important. I know women that, you know, their work, whatever level it might have been, their financial security is the thing that's kept them going through their major times of trouble. And, you know, it's just something that's inspired them, motivated them. They've got their friendship groups, their networks outside of the home that have really helped to support them. And I would also say, you know, kind of set targets, set realistic targets, you know, achieve them, bust those targets, reset your targets and go again. There's no harm in doing that. Just keep on going. So a couple of things about my own experience in the workplace. So it is a very male-dominated organisation, very male-dominated society. And, you know, majority, in fact, even now, my peer group is white men. And, you know, a few years ago in the business that I worked in before, I would sit in a room every Monday morning with a group of white men who would talk over me, and they would like say how big their deals were. You know, we're talking about millions of pounds, and, you know, the way that they articulated themselves was just so much more powerful than me. Yet a lot of the work that I was doing was, you know, just on the next level to theirs. So I learned from them how to express myself and how to be in that room with them. And one of the things that I learned to do as well, when these men were talking over me, I learned how to keep going, to raise the tone of my voice and not stop talking. And what happened there is that they stopped talking, and they gave me a space in that room, and they gave me that voice. And then I spoke to them individually to let them know that this was my experience. Did they know that they were doing that? And of course they didn't. But you see, that was my problem to solve. It wasn't theirs, but I gave it back to them. So that was a really, really important thing that happened to me. What I would say about the world of work, the corporate world of work, because of the focus that we've had on diversity and inclusion, that there is no space for the types of men generally that exert that power and abuse towards women. There's no space for you, because there's people like me and my colleagues in our employee-led networks that are doing something about it. We've been doing this for many years, and we've got this massive voice. So we're making space for you, the young women, the next generation, and we want you to come and join us. So you know, just to say that as a working mum, I started, for me, it was a job, but over the years now, of course, it's become a career. And in the past few years, since I've been living and working in London, I've had mum guilt every single day. So my daughter was going to school, breakfast club, you know, after school club, I'd be picking her up, you know, a minute to 6 o'clock before the school gates shut, because that's just the way that, you know, we managed our lives, you know. And so being at home now means that every day I can go and pick her up from school. That's in my diary every single day. So for her, I am a mum at home, and I have been for the last 12 months, which has been fantastic. But that, you know, that guilt doesn't go away. And during the pandemic, women's work at home has changed. So my home hierarchy is my other half, who also works in financial services in a very senior role. My daughter, who I've already said is her GCSEs, and then there's me. My job is an alpha male job. So in many households, my job is a senior job. But in my home, I am number 3. I'm on the bottom of the list of hierarchy. You know, I still have to manage the home. I have to manage kind of what my child is doing, what my daughter is doing with her education. And, you know, priorities have changed. So there is research that says that women working at home in this COVID environment, on average, their careers have been set back 7 years. And so there is facts, there are statistics around that. But I would say, you know, cut through my career, what's most important is being that role model. Just one, you said earlier, how can the next generation be what they can't see? Well, there are some of us around, but actually, you young women, you can be that next role model. You can be the ones that, you know, people look up to in the future. So, you know, it's tough to get through that mum guilt, but get over it. And what's most important is that we're setting, you know, we are the role models to our daughters and to the next generation. Finally, you can't be perfect at everything. So just be, you know, the perfect in the best way that you can, or just forget being perfect and be yourself.
Wow, Jasvinder, that was amazing. I really loved the, you know, the real tangible advice that you shared there, as well as sharing all of the things that you've been working to do within your organization. I'm definitely going to take that tip that you shared with the tone and to continue to work. I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna try that next time I get on. Parvinder, what are your thoughts? And you know, especially as a mum to a young family, what advice can you share?
Well, I agree with both the speakers. I really love what Mandeep said about the vision, and, you know, don't wait for somebody to come and make you happy. You've got to do that. And I really like what Jasvinder said about, you know, you have to manage. And again, what Jaswant said earlier, 9 times out of 10, when I walk into a room, I'm in a room of white men, you know, and having to prove yourself, you do have to prove yourself and your competence. But at the same time, what I would say is that you set your bar higher. You know, somebody once said to me, Pav, you don't need to know A to Z, you just need to know A to D. And I said, no, actually, I need to know more than A to D, because actually I need to be able to demonstrate in that room that I can hold my own. And I think with the time that I've spent in policing, when I speak, people listen. But I guess from my point of view, my advice would be, and I agree with Jaswin, not everybody's had the same start in life. You've already had people that have influenced your life up to this point. The decision you have to make is what you do next. How do you take that forward? And again, I agree that continuous learning is absolutely critical. Never stop learning, always keep learning, whether you're learning about yourself, whether you're learning about your trade, whether you're networking, whatever that looks like, always have that continuous learning. And remember that when you set out to do something, if things don't work out, you're going to learn more from that than you will from your successes. So always use every opportunity as a learning opportunity. That is absolutely critical. Maintain your values. That's one thing I'd say to you. You will have pressure put on you to conform. Don't conform, maintain your values. What is your temp check? What is your balance? When you make a decision, what is it that gives you that balance and makes you feel like, hang on a minute, what feels right to me here? How can I justify my decision making? And don't forget that as you go higher up in the echelons of whichever industry or whichever career you're in, remember to maintain that humanity. Remember to be able to have those human conversations. Remember to be able to connect with people at every level. That's really important. And I agree with what Jaswin said. Set a vision for yourself, but break it down into goals. Set goals for yourselves. Make them tangible. Whether that looks like an action plan, if you're an action plan kind of person, do it. But always set yourself goals. And when you do set those goals, always think win-win. Always think mutual benefit. This is the reason why we're all here today, because we want to mutually benefit everybody that's on this call. We want to make sure that everybody has a win-win out of these conversations. So that win-win will always take you further than being competitive. And if you're going to be competitive with yourself. Always aim to beat yourself and make sure that you aim to be a better version of yourself every time. The other thing that I would advise is give back. If there's one thing you've heard from the messages that you've heard today, is everybody wants to make sure they lay a pathway where others can walk in those footsteps, and indeed further and stronger. So always give back and make sure that you believe that you can, because if you believe you can, you're halfway there. And what I would suggest is surround yourself with people who are positive, who give you that self-belief, because if ever you waver, at least they have belief in you and you can borrow that belief. So I would suggest that's the way that I've always worked. I've always worked for mutual benefit. I'm absolutely privileged to be speaking with the panel that we have today. We've got some fantastic role models. I mean, take those forward, take that learning and apply it to your life. That would be my advice.
Oh my gosh, when are you going to get your own motivational speaking platform? That was amazing. And I really loved, you know, a lot of the advice that you shared had a lot to do with Sikh values, you know, a lot of that I felt and I feel similar on as well. Thank you so much. And I know that the 80 people that we have on at the moment will learn so much from that. Just keeping on the topic of careers, Swan, we've got a question in for you. The question reads, as an undergraduate student studying law, we see a large number of Sikh, Indian and other ethnic minorities in the legal professions. So why do we still see a lack of representation in senior visible roles? And do you see that this will change in the future, or are there unspoken hurdles that need to be addressed?
Yeah, very good question. And I think we've got to kind of look to see, you know, what are the kind of pathways to those kind of senior roles. So I work for the Crown Prosecution Service. It's a public service. It's defended. It's not a defence service. We've got a public defence service, which is very small, but it's part of the civil service. So I took that pathway. I didn't go into corporate law. I didn't go into the city. There were kind of options to do that, but my kind of calling was to do this kind of work. And I think it's not a pathway that many people kind of take. I think lots of kind of my colleagues went to the bar, stayed there, or they set up their own kind of law firms, or they went into corporate law, etc. And I think in my role, because it's an outward facing role, it's a public service role, I'm prosecuting on behalf of the public. So it's a public prosecuting role I have. It's a leadership role as well, and it's a representative leadership role. And it's important because we have all sorts of communities, we have diverse communities. So the people who are prosecuting and making these really important decisions have to represent those communities. It's difficult because it's not easy. So it's, you know, I won't go back to the obstacles. There are obstacles in the way. It's damn hard to sustain it. It's part of the legal establishment, and you've got to have the resilience to be able to kind of get through. I was lucky because I was able to kind of support myself through having 2 children because of paid maternity leave. These are important things. So I was flexible working. That helped me to kind of be able to do my job and go through. And lots of women kind of leave the kind of roles in their kind of 30s or 40s to kind of pursue different pathways. And I often kind of ask, why is that? It's because they didn't find there were the opportunities there. They didn't have the kind of support there. So it's back to making sure that we understand why, when women are on a certain path, why they get thrown off the path or choose to go off that path. And what do we need to address that? So support programs again, and I think mentors. I was looking through the kind of chat to see, you know, really kind of interesting. So, you know, thank you for all the contributors to the kind of chat. Looking to see why there aren't certain people in certain places. We need senior sponsors to be able to say, look, be part of my network, put your name forward, have people you're looking after and mentoring. I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of kind of coaching to try and encourage people to let them see a different way forward. And I think once you kind of do that, you understand when you're in a room with other leaders, well, look, hey, I'm just as good as them. You know, this mystery gets deemed me. Can I do that? Of course you can. All of you can. All of you out there can. They're only other human beings. They've got different strengths and different skills, but you have those as well. And I think I think there's a bit of a mystery around, you know, certainly in the civil service, this kind of pathway to the kind of top. Demystify it. Talk about it, talk about the jobs we can do, and inspire others to kind of continue and sustain that continuity, so we have more and more people coming through the pipeline.
Thank you so much. And actually, one of the questions are any of you mentors? Do you do that? Do you offer that? If you do, please let us know, and then we can share that information and how people might be able to get in touch with you, because I'm sure you're going to all have a really long queue of people wanting to mentor. Brian, did you want to come in?
I did, and it's a perfect time for me to interject why Sikh Assembly and SWAN decided this was a good session for us to be having on International Women's Day in particular. So one of the welfare programs that we've kind of thought about and we're putting together is around mentoring within the Sikh community, not just for women, but broadly, and mentoring for life. Not just narrow career and how to further career, but also this strengthening that we're giving to each other in this conversation today. I mean, I've been spellbound by the stories that the panelists have shared in terms of their own personal values. What is it that keeps you going? What is it that helps you get over adversity? How does one keep the home together? How do you keep your own head together? How do you keep going? You know, these are the questions that every single one of us asks ourselves at some point. And you know, knowing that other people have done it, knowing that there are role models, one of the things that Sikh Assembly is doing, this conversation today is part of that conversation. How do we connect the people that need help with the people that can give help? How do we as a community help strengthen ourselves so that there is that helping hand? And I think Bavinda said it really beautifully, that when you do feel a little bit down, where's that hand that's going to come back and give you that self-confidence and build you up again? And we're all there. And we need to find that connection. So I will say, you can see the chat has been very busy. And Gurmukh Singh, who we didn't introduce right at the start, as you've known, he sat there and looked at all of the conversation. We will be feeding back to some of the commentary. But the outcome of our discussions as we have these sessions is to collect the views. And there will be a survey after this session today, which we would urge all of the attendees to complete and return back to us, because we want to understand how you would like us to continue the conversation, how we can build this mentor-mentee relationship and bring it forward so that it's available as a community resource. We've already started to do that with our disability discussions, which was done in December, and this conversation around mentoring, and I call it mentoring for life, mentoring for careers, mentoring as human beings. And I'm very conscious we've run over time, Shani, but I did want to share a little bit from Sikh Assembly's perspective on women. As you've probably all noted, it's not that often that we find a Sikh organization with a female CEO. You have two of them here, with Narendra and I both leading in different organizations in the Sikh space. And one of the things that I feel we wanted to make sure that we shared, and I think it's a good time to say this comment now. Who is our role model? Who are we all aspiring to? Our Gurujis, you know, they gave us everything, the range of how to live your life at whatever age. That's Badshaya, with such a different environment over the 230 odd years through which they journeyed and taught us how to live. And in every single instance that you look at the history of Sikhs, the role of women, you know, whether you're thinking about Bibi Nanki as the sister of Guru Nanak Dev Ji and how she believed in him and inspired so many people. I mean, I still think about her achievement at that point in time in the society at that time, how it must have felt to be the champion for a younger brother. So that's a huge role model there. But if you take it through, you know, the role of my Buggle, you know, she was basically bodyguard for Guru Gobind Singh. How many of us know that? And how many of us have seen that huge, huge pistol that she carried and the big, you know, bow that she could carry on her back? I think of Karanjit as today's modern power lifter. It's in our genes. And there's no difference. Man tu jod swaroop hai, apna mool pachan. You know, Guruji says this to us. Your limitation is just you not allowing your mind to open. And that's addressed to all men and women. So as our heritage through, you know, I think all society, you know, good people are around in every community. But I do think that the everyday Mulmant, or the everyday Sikhi value, we've heard it from all the panelists, and how are we thinking about the next step at work? How do you break that male clique? How do you get rid of the bullying in your workplace? How do you as a manager stop that happening in your group? How do you keep your eyes open? How do you still keep growing? How do you keep being educated? These things are all pointing towards one thing. We have it in us. All of us have it in us. That's what the Shabbat is saying. Recognize that you have in you a divine spark and then live with it, and live with it every day. And one of the things that I wanted to really comment on was, as a community, we mustn't be introverted. As individuals, we can't afford to be introverted. So these journeys and these life skills have to be shared, because it then inspires other people to actually take that deep breath and go for it. So I think that was, sorry, Shani, I've kind of barged in with my monologue, but I wanted to just say how much I feel inspired by the conversation we've had today on, it's not simple. None of us have actually nobody's born with a golden spoon. We've all battled in our different fields, and the battle isn't just at work. It is at home. It is with broader families. I've seen some questions around in-law relationships and how many of us are really honest about the barriers we face sometimes. So you know, it's what Mandeep Kaur said, it's what Pravinder said, dream, be who you are, stand tall. Doesn't matter how tall you are. I'm only 4'9" and 3/4. 3/4 is very important. But it's because you have to be who you are, because you believe in yourself, and then everybody else can believe you too. I'm going to hand back to you, Shani.
Thank you so much. And you know, someone's just asked in the chat, can we find out more about the mentoring? And yes, we will absolutely share that and follow up with you all, because, you know, as we mentioned, it's so important. So we are going to close the event in 5 minutes. Thank you all for staying on, and especially to our panelists, who I know many of whom were working up until the 7 o'clock start of this this event today, and probably haven't had their roti. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you staying a little bit extra. And we want to give you the last word before we close out the event. And the one question that I would like you all to answer, just very briefly, is which woman would you each nominate for a Nobel Peace Prize? So this is a question that's come in on the chat. Mandeep, you're my top left. Do you want to, Mandeep Kaur Virdi, do you want to answer that first?
It gives me great pleasure. My mum.
I would say the same. Oh, thank you. Parvinder?
Wow, I think that's got to be the ultimate difficult question. I think there's many people on this call I'd love to nominate, and I think I agree with Mandeep. You know, I think our mothers are our role models right from day one. My mum has always been my rock and always been the person to support me, but also my nanny, powerful woman. And I do wonder, if she was born in this day and age, what she could have achieved with her skills and her strength and her resolve. Absolutely phenomenal. But I think there are so many we could nominate, but I'm going to chicken out on that one and say there's quite a few.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, hard to choose one. Just one, who would you nominate?
I'm sorry, as a tribute to Mother's Day, it's going to my mum as well. So I think the mums are going to have it. You know, fantastic role models. And I think about the journeys they took coming to this country in the kind of 60s, not being able to speak the language, and to rear, you know, a generation of kind of successful kind of children, and live in a cold environment. Absolutely fantastic. So I'm sorry to my mum as well, and all the other mums out there.
Thank you. Paramji.
I'm getting a little teared up because it is definitely my mum, and I'm going to share that my mother has been bedbound for the last 5 years, and we hardly, you know, with COVID, it's been hard to visit her. I did go around to see her on Sunday, since we can, in these care, you know, from a care perspective, you can do that. Her first question to me, how are you? How are the children? How are you guys coping? And I'm thinking, this is a woman whose best friend is her bed, and that's it. There's very little else going on. but a lifetime of inspiration on how to be strong, how to be gentle, how to be soft, how to be hard, how to be everything. She's, whenever I'm stuck, that's who I think about, Mom.
Norinda?
Sorry, I'm going to have to join the rest of the ladies. I'm afraid my mum as well. So, you know, our mothers have faced so many challenges back in the 60s. You know, so roles of mothers have changed. And, you know, they've adapted accordingly, even though they've come back from India and they're here in the UK. And the strength that everyone has and to go forward and believe in yourself, that comes from your mother. They're the ones that nurture you. They're the ones that give you the strength, the self-belief. And even today, so she's sort of like in her 80s, and the first thing, like Benji has said, that my mum says is like, how so what's going, so she just has to do a tick list on every single person to make sure that every single person is okay, even though she's the one with all the health issues. So I think, you know, shout out to all the mums out there in the world. So, you know, you're all fantastic.
I think we need to have an event with all of the moms. Do you agree that they're clearly winning here? Jasvinder, who would you nominate?
Well, of course, Mum and all mums. So sadly, I lost my mum at the beginning of last year. And just a matter of days ago, really, really good friend of mine, like my sister, she you know, she's my other sister. She lost her mum just a very few days ago. So tribute to all of our mums. There was a question, I know we haven't managed to answer all the questions, but there was a question here about somebody whose mum lost her husband. So she became a widow at the age of 40, now age 65. And she's brought up her children to be strong, you know, she's the one that's nurtured that family and brought them up, you know, all these years later. But there's a statement there that, you know, society, there's a lack of respect for her. Society doesn't give her a voice. Society doesn't believe in her. So I think we need to recognise the good work that our mothers have done collectively, and we need to show more respect for that older generation. Without them, we wouldn't have achieved what we've achieved and we wouldn't be here.
You're so right. You're absolutely right. You know, we can only do what we do because of their hard work and their sacrifice and their courage, that, you know, to do everything that they did, moving to a different country, learning a new language, learning a new way of life. You're absolutely right. Thank you for sharing that. Karen G.
Yeah, I think it's just really heartwarming what everyone said, and I'm going to echo everyone else by also saying my mum is also watching us downstairs, so hi to my mum as well. My mum is one of my greatest inspirations, an example of a really strong woman. I know that when she was born in Punjab, and she didn't have an opportunity to pursue her education, or she came from a very sporty family herself, and she didn't have that kind of opportunity. But when she married my father and came to this country, she was given the opportunity to kind of pursue sport. As a masters athlete, she won 5 golds and 4 silver medals in track and field. So to me, she's just like superwoman. At the same time, she also improved had access to education, and just an absolutely incredible lady. She's my best friend, and she's always my rock during all the tough times throughout my journey. So a huge shout out to all the mums out there for everything that they do. They run the household. They are the glue for the family and help be the backbone to the family. So thank you so much for everything you do, and we love you.
Mom's definitely have it. Mandeep, your nomination?
So I had a chance to think. So because there's so many historical role models for me, Bibinan Ki ji, Mai Pago ji, Bibi Daler Kaur ji are some of the historical figures that they've been my inspiration and role models. But having said that, I had a touch of 2 women in my life who I experienced as in face to face, physically. First being my mother. I lost my dad when I was at a age when I was doing my GCSEs. And I was in a very good school and back in Punjab, and that meant big expensive fee as well, because the education is different there as compared to here. And I remember the pressure that that my mom had from society and the relatives that take her out from there. The breadwinner is gone. There is nobody who's going to pay her fee, and she's a girl. She's going to get married, go to her house. So, and it was my mother who stood up against all that societal pressure. Then she said, if she wants to study, she will study, and Guru Nanak will give me the money to keep her studying. And I still, those words still resonate in my ears. And since that day up till now, she always trusted and believed in me. You know, when I even got this job, it was her who I phoned. I said, look, I don't deserve this job. I'm not going to take it. She said, you know, it won't be given to you if you don't deserve it. So just go with the flow. And the other woman is my mother-in-law. I learned so much patience, you know, and the fact that she can see me as a friend and share her own life pains and trauma with me. I see that as an achievement for myself, definitely, that because I hear a lot of mother-in-law stories and all of that, but it's a mutual thing, and I'm not here going into that conversation right now. But for me, definitely my mother and my mother-in-law, because they're my moms. So definitely the nomination goes to moms. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful story. Well, look, thank you all for joining today. You're all incredible panelists, and I think, I mean, you all need your own event just to do you all justice. I really appreciate that you stayed on a lot longer as well, as have our attendees. They're still going strong. But look, thank you all so much. It's been such an invaluable session, and I know I've learned so much, and it's just an honour to be in all of your company. As I said, we will share the recording, we will share links to resources, and we will, of course, be inviting the panel back for lots of different topics and discussions. But that's all from me. I'm going to hand back to Paramjeet just to close the event.
And thank you so much. And first of all, Shani, that was beautifully chaired, effortlessly done, and I think you helped weave our conversation together. So yes, big hand for Shani. And I have to tell you, Shani is actually in the midst of organizing a huge event, which is the Asian Women Festival, which is coming up this weekend, and I think it's going to have about 1,500 attendees. So she's only got that little thing to do at the back of her mind, but she accepted my request to join us and help us run this event. So thank you so much. And it's been really, really easy for us to have this conversation. I'd like to thank every one of you and Jagdev Singh, Gurmukh Singh, and actually the rest of the Sikh Assembly team that are supporting us and monitoring the chat and will be doing the follow-up. A special thank you to a woman you haven't seen on screen, but she's been critical to this event, Raji Kaur Gill. She's the glue, and she's definitely acted as my shoulder to lean on, somebody to vent, and definitely have lots of cackling laughter around lots of things we do. So really, really happy that we've had your time. I'm very conscious of how precious time is, and especially an evening when schools have reopened and we're all busy juggling many things. And I am really impressed with our participants, because we still have the majority of the participants still online, and I'm really, really privileged to have been able to hold this event for Sikh Assembly. As we've said before, this is the first of this particular conversation. We will be continuing this conversation. Hopefully our panelists will join us again, and we will be collecting the surveys back, the questions again. Jagdev Singh, thank you so much for helping to run that survey post-event. We should have the feedback later on tonight in terms of the questions, but over the next week or two, we will be compiling some of that, and then we'll arrange to share it back. I know Gurmukh Singh has also said that the chat, which many people are interested in, if you're able to share your email address, then we will be able to send some of that back to you as well. There was a request from one of the Q&A around whether the panel is happy to share their email addresses, because people want to be in touch. I think obviously we would like to offer the medium of Sikh Assembly because we have your addresses, and if people want to be in touch with you and you want to say yes, then we can obviously make sure that those connections happen. Otherwise, we can obviously do it through the Sikh Assembly platform. Conscious, it's 8 minutes past 9, and I'm pretty sure most people haven't eaten yet. So I'm going to close there, and I will say thank you ever so much to everybody. And Maharaj Kirpa, let us all thrive. Let's all live in humility. And Chardi Kala actually means at every single moment in our lives, let's celebrate what we have and what's to come and live life with confidence. Thank you so much, everyone. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
panelists.
everyone.
Thanks, audience. Bye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.